Hello and welcome to another episode of Teacher Talk, brought to you by TalentHut TESOL Academy. I'm your host, Sabina Rustamova, greeting you from the land of fire, Azerbaijan. And today we're diving into truly transformative topic, multidimensional scaffolding to support language learning. Joining us from United States, Dr. Andrea Honixfeld, a distinguished educator, researcher, global presenter whose work has shaped how teachers worldwide think about scaffolding, collaboration, multilingual learner equity. We're honored to have her insights today. So please, Miss Andrea.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you very much. To begin, Dr. Andrea, let's look at the bigger picture. How do you see multilingual learner equity evolving in United States schools, and what systematic changes are still urgently needed?
Well, one of the biggest challenges with multilingual education is to recognize that all teachers are teachers of multilingual learners. If
Mhm.
we're thinking in the United States, in the US context, so the children are in the classroom all day long with teachers, math teachers, science teachers, English teachers, but it cannot be just the English teachers or the ELD, English language development specialist job to support multilingual learners. So I see the challenge to be the recognition of this shared ownership that
Mhm.
every educator can support language and literacy development.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Your doctoral work focused on individualized instruction. How has your thinking on personalization shifted in today's collaborative, standards-driven classrooms?
So each student will go through the stages of language proficiency. We know that they start out with the silent period and then they move on to early production. So there are predictable stages to
Mhm.
language development. That's very well established in second language acquisition. However, each child, each person will also be a unique individual. So there are a lot of idiosyncrasies, just the way language develops, how the child might bring different background knowledge, prior knowledge, lived experiences, how
Mhm.
their motivation or affinity for languages will shape how they develop as language learners. So we have to take into consideration not just what research says about the stages of language acquisition, but
Mhm.
how each student will be a highly unique individual.
Mhm. So collaboration is such a cornerstone of effective teaching. What are the most effective teacher collaboration models you have observed internationally, and how do they compare to US practices?
So I'm a huge advocate for teacher collaboration, especially during the phase of collaborative planning, looking at curriculum together, and it could be both in the international context and in the US context. But the difference is that in the US context, typically it would be the classroom teacher or the core content teacher
Mhm.
and the language specialist who would be collaborating to
Mhm.
make sure that whatever content we have to teach, we're also the teachers of the language and literacy elements of that
Mhm.
content. And that's the very fancy term for that is disciplinary literacy. So
Mhm.
each discipline has its own unique way of using language. For example, when you read a math problem,
Mhm.
it's going to sound very different from reading a haiku poem.
Mhm.
Or when we're expecting our students to write a science report, that's very different from writing a narrative story in English.
Mhm.
So each teacher will have to teach the genre, the unique vocabulary, the unique way that language is used in their classrooms. In the international context, I think
Mhm.
it's more common for English language development teachers, English as an additional language, EAL, ESL. We have a lot
Mhm.
of acronyms for these
Very good.
teachers, of course, so that they work together so that there is more consistency and more continuity. Because language only develops if the multilingual brain can make those connections. So I'm a huge advocate for making sure that teachers create a consistent learning environment and there's continuity with the strategies, with the practices, with the curriculum that the students are experiencing.
Mhm. That's great. So, but what about co-teaching? So basically, co-teaching is often discussed, but not always understood. But what about in your work with co-teaching frameworks? What misconceptions do school often have, and how can leaders dismantle them to foster authentic partnerships?
Sure. So co-teaching cannot be equated with a push-in model.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people talk about a service delivery model in which the ELD specialist goes into the classroom and works with the content teacher, with the classroom teacher. But if there's no co-planning, if there's no collaboration, if
Mm-hmm.
they did not look at the curriculum together, then the specialist cannot be an equal part of that partnership, but will simply be floating around sitting with some students and will become a helper rather than recognizing that true co-teaching requires two highly qualified educators
Mm-hmm.
to be working with all the students. So that's the big misconception. And it's not an easy model to implement because administrators, leaders need to
Mm-hmm.
provide time for teachers to collaborate. Teachers need to get to know each other, forge a partnership, feel comfortable with each other. And if they're not given time and opportunity to develop that relationship, it's very hard to even just be partners in the classroom. Often one teacher takes over and the other one becomes an assistant, and we don't want to see that.
Yeah, as I guess from your words, it's very common in US, let's say, learn teaching practices to have co-teaching very, let's say, um, hold back. So basically, what I mean, because as you mentioned, the administratives, educate sorry, education leaders. So basically, they focus on mostly, let's say, targets. They mostly focus on the, let's say, curriculum. They don't want to let others work together, at least to give them time to collaborate with one another. Yeah, that's a very common, I think, issue in my country as well. So, yeah, we don't have time. So we are in the rat race right now. So we are in a rush and hurry somewhere. But in fact, it would be better to like to get involved into the process together with my like partners, with my let's say teacher peers. Okay, so all right. So you've presented at conferences worldwide. What global conference insights have you found most revealing about common challenges and unique solutions for multilingual learners?
Well, just going back to the teacher collaboration, that teaching can be a very lonely profession. If each teacher looks at his or her lesson plans,
Mm-hmm.
curriculum, plans out the lessons, and we're not communicating with each other, then with the best of intention, each teacher is doing their very best, but the students are not benefiting from a more consistent instructional practice. For multilingual learners, I think one of the biggest challenge that I'm seeing right now is that there's less of an attention or sometimes even lack of attention to oracy. We focus so much on literacy that the students need to learn to read, they need to write, but how can you write something that you have never spoken?
Yeah.
So spoken language, oral language, an opportunity for the students to also collaborate, to interact with each other, to authentically engage in problem solving. That's what I see as a best next step for our field to consider.
Mm-hmm.
And
Uh,
interestingly, it was just right before we got on this call, I was on LinkedIn and I was looking at some of the posts that some of my colleagues internationally are posting. I always read what's happening in the world. And an educator from China posted, a leader from China posted that they just completed their year of the talk, the year
mm,
of talking, that they truly emphasized academic discourse, student to student interaction, partner talk for the whole year. And what a change it was for some of the students who needed to just come out of their shell, just come out of that reserved stance, and
mhm,
some other students who needed to refine their um, performance when they are presenting something. Yet other students benefited from this initiative because they were able to make stronger arguments. So they
mhm,
were able to um, argue their points. So it's not arguing like fighting,
Yeah, 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 debating.
but debating, exactly, taking a position, coming up with valid arguments and evidence for the points that they're making. So she was just ecstatic reporting on this. So I was so happy to see that indeed there is interest in strengthening oral language, oracy,
Yeah,
in
yeah. So,
schools.
yeah, that's very important to like amplify all those skills, as you mentioned, reading, listening, speaking, because all of them are engaged, all of them link to one another. So once one of them is improved, and it just leaves the impact on other skill as well. So, okay. So, what about, so as you mentioned that, like, your, let's say global conference insights, but now I would like ask you in 2020, or sorry, in 2002, you received a Fulbright award to lecture in Iceland. So, how did that experience influence your views on multilingual education and intercultural collaboration? And in what ways did it shape the trajectory of your later research and publications?
Yes, that was a truly wonderful honor to receive a Fulbright placement in Iceland, of all places, where there were 27 languages spoken. And the students who were arriving from around the world, some of them were part of a refugee resettlement center. They were coming from different parts of Asia and Eastern Europe and other parts of the world. They needed to learn Icelandic as a new
Mm-hmm,
language. So
mm-hmm,
the language of instruction in Iceland is Icelandic.
mm-hmm,
And they did not really have a lot of expertise at that time in how to teach Icelandic as a new language. So they looked to the United States, to Britain, um, to the Scandinavian countries. So they really tapped in a whole bunch of researchers and outside experts' experience figuring out what are the best practices to teach a new language, which in this case was not English, but it
mm-hmm,
was Icelandic. So since I had my EFL, English as a foreign language background from Hungary, where I was born,
mm-hmm.
and then I had the ESL from the United States, from both my research and being a New York City public school teacher, I was selected and I was very excited to share about how we teach English as a foreign language or as a new language and how they can translate some of those practices into Icelandic. And indeed, it was such an amazing experience to live in another country, to be experiencing a new culture myself, and my family was with me. So I will fondly remember forever
Mm-hmm.
my time in Iceland or just wherever I get to travel in the world. It's a very, very special experience to always bring that humility. I never come across like, oh, I'm going to tell you what to do. Instead, my stance is that we're here to learn together, and I'm just one more person in the room who have a different set of eyes, a different set of ears and hands, and
Yeah.
let's just combine our expertise.
Yeah, definitely. So that was a valuable experience for you, as I understood. So that's great. So, okay, what about consistency and differentiation? So basically, consistency and differentiation often feel like a balancing act, but what role do core instructional routines play in balancing differentiation with consistency in literacy classrooms?
So, both in the United States context and anywhere where learners want to learn a new language, be it
Mm-hmm,
English, Icelandic, or French, whatever language, again, the bilingual brain needs to see patterns.
mm-hmm,
When we're building a new language, the brain is constructing patterns, recognizing how past tense is formed in another language, how you put together words into sentences, and so forth. So I'm a huge advocate for routines and structures and any kind of instructional as well as classroom management practices that are predictable, that are safe for our learners, because then that affective filter goes down. So we still tap back to Steve Krashen's theory about creating that supportive environment. Ida Walke talks about high challenge, high support learning environments. So we have to make sure as educators that our students are going to take risks, that
mm-hmm.
they feel safe and comfortable, because without that, they're going to shut down and they're not going to
Yeah.
use the new language. So that's why routines, structures, whether they are instructional practices or how you set up your classroom for a day, for a week, for a month, for the students to see what they're expected to do is very important.
Mhm. So consistency is very important as we guess because as you mentioned in language learning, it doesn't matter which language you are learning. There should be some kind of discipline, structure to learn it, to like perceive it. So, and I do believe that it's very important in language learning to know your native language well well, because whenever you just, okay, in our brain, as you mentioned, that whenever brain recognized another strange language, it should just somehow translate uh, the words into that different language. So basically, those words should be placed in your brain correctly if you know, of course, your native language well. So yeah, that's very important, as you mentioned, to know the native language. So okay, your Breaking the Mold series has sparked important conversations. So which ideas have become mainstream and which remain aspirational?
Well, in the Breaking the Mold series that I co-edited with Dr. Audrey Cohen, we wanted to gather up practitioner-oriented, field-based research, case studies, focus group discussions, and other research projects that truly document what is happening in the classroom and in the schools, also at the school level, at the district level. So, how educators can break the mold
Mm-hmm.
and think outside the box, be creative, not feel that it's just the same old, same old. We have to keep doing what we have always done, but be more innovative and initiate new approaches to education. Now, the 5 volumes really spread into every possible direction from culturally and linguistically diverse education to classroom management to teacher education. So I wouldn't be able to pinpoint one um, specific aspect of
Mm-hmm.
the entire series, except what keeps everything together, what holds the entire series together, which is to encourage educators, researchers, and practitioners to be creative, to think
Mm-hmm.
outside the box.
Yeah. So, okay, so as you mentioned, thinking outside the box, but what's the role of technology? So, because technology nowadays is reshaping classrooms everywhere, and how can educators harness digital age teaching tools for multilingual learners without reinforcing inequities in access?
Well, that's a really, really big question, and it's such an important question, especially now in the age of AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest concerns that we should all be considering as educators is access. Who has access to technology and digital tools, but not just simply handing a child
Mm-hmm.
a laptop or an iPad, but also being able to teach digital citizenship. And I know
Mm-hmm.
this is a big term, and we throw around so many big terms, digital literacy, digital citizenship, but preparing students not just to quickly learn how to use an app. They're probably learning those apps faster than we can learn, and they're going to be the innovators of the next generation. But how to use technology, especially AI, in an ethical, responsible way,
Mm-hmm.
while at the same time, of course, harness technology for language, literacy development, content attainment. So I think as educators, we need to partner with our students because
Mm-hmm.
some things they will know faster, they will be ahead of us with technology use. I have 3 children, so I see what they're doing with technology. It's unbelievable how they intuitively learn about the technology tools. But what they have to learn from us educators, parents, responsible technology developers, digital companies, they also have to learn how to be ethical, how to
Mm-hmm.
use tools in an ethical way, and responsibly using technology. There's also fascinating research about how when we are too dependent on technology and completely move away from handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
That indeed that practice was hurting our kids' thinking processes. This is fascinating research that I haven't cited yet I have not conducted that research, but bringing back the importance of hands-on learning.
Mm-hmm.
So not to go too far in the extreme when all we're doing is being on our devices, but to be able to engage the students in multimodal learning, multisensory experiences, and including handwriting.
Yeah, handwriting is very important. Unfortunately, nowadays I think it's a little bit ignored. Yeah. So, but what about like I mean that US practices to be digital citizen? How the schools conduct that curriculum to help the students to be let's say digital citizen?
So it's combining it with critical and creative thinking. So if we think about Bloom's taxonomy, the old
Mm-hmm.
version, the highest level was evaluation and synthesis. The newer version, the highest level is creativity, so being able to create something new. So uh, structuring assignments for our students that use digital tools, but at the same time do not compromise critical thinking and
Mm-hmm.
creative thinking at the same time. And that's no small feat because now it seems like AI can do everything for us.
Mm-hmm.
But there are plenty of challenges and plenty of inaccuracies that are present in any kind of AI produced material. So inviting our students to not just to be, but to grow as critical thinkers.
Yeah, not
And
rely on AI all the time.
exactly. The over-reliance on AI, especially the over-reliance on translation, is yet another concern with technology because we could tell AI, I tried it out in Hungarian.
Mhm.
AI even speaks Hungarian, which is a very hard language to learn. So I can give directions to AI and it's going to produce any essay, any kind of assignment. So then where is the learning? Where is the critical thinking? How do we make sure that the next generation of learners continue to be growing as language learners, as capable and critical thinkers and writers, and they contribute also to the advance of technology even further.
Thank you very much. Leadership in collaboration is critical. So, what qualities distinguish leadership in collaboration for multilingual learners, and how can others emulate them?
So when we expect teachers to collaborate, I think just about all teachers I've ever worked with, they always tell me, oh, yes, we collaborate. I share my lesson plan. So often there's a misunderstanding and misconception around collaboration that it's simply sharing. Well, if I send you my lesson plan, Sabina, that's a one-way street. And then you
Mhm.
look at it, and then maybe you send me your lesson plan. And did we collaborate? Well, we just exchanged ideas, and
Mhm.
that's a good start. But ultimately, we have not really generated anything new. So
Mhm.
collaboration, by definition, is fluid and co-generative, so that we create something that hasn't been ever produced by anybody.
Mhm.
So you have your set of ideas and challenges, and I have mine, and then we put our heads together and we come up with something new. Well, leadership has to be ready to create a platform for this. This
Mhm.
kind of thinking, this kind of collaboration, again, requires time. That's where
Mhm.
leaders are really critical to set that up, to create the platform for it, the opportunity for it. But more importantly, collaboration also requires risk taking
Mhm.
because in a culture, in a school culture, classroom culture, in any kind of an institution where we work together, we have to be able to let go of that feeling that what if I'm wrong? What if I mispronounce a word? What if I
Mhm.
say something that is faced with disapproval? So we have to be able to take risks and be assertive around our personal and professional philosophies of education, and then bring our very best forward, of course, but also create space for other ideas. So it's a two-way street. On the one hand, I have to be brave enough to
Mm-hmm.
participate in a collaborative activity, but also have to create space for other people so that they would feel safe. Now, that's where leadership also comes in play. Leaders have to model this.
Yeah.
They can't just assign, like, okay, you collaborate when indeed the leader is not collaborating. So leadership has to be collaborative. Leaders have to model it, champion it, name it,
Mm-hmm.
and then collaboration can thrive.
So leaders should make it happen. So, curriculum design is evolving rapidly, but with your recent work on co-planning, how do you envision curriculum evolving to better integrate language and content learning?
Well, curriculum sometimes is already given to teachers. The scope and sequence, maybe a textbook is given to some teachers. This is going to be turned into the weekly lesson plans and the daily lesson activities. Collaboration is really critical with co-planning. When the teachers come together, they examine that written curriculum and then they consider what the students can do. Because
Mm-hmm.
that curriculum, that textbook was never written for your students. They were
Mm-hmm.
never written for my students. So they're generic. So this is where we circle back to that notion of personalizing instruction, making sure that whatever is in the curriculum is aligned to our students' needs. So continuous assessment, progress monitoring will be an important part of this process. And then co-planning basically also allows us to see where we have to accelerate learning
Mm-hmm.
and where we have to maybe stop and process and individualize or offer some interventions for some students. So when we collaboratively plan, then we're better able to reach our students in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. So looking ahead, what next decade trends in ALT do you believe will most transform English language teaching globally?
Well, I think we're going to circle back to AI. AI is definitely everywhere. If you think about it, a lot of research is emerging, um, a lot of practical recommendations. So many new books, articles are published on how to use AI in support of language development. In my own work, I have found an over-reliance on AI for translating.
Mhm.
So we talked about the importance of the home language, of the native language, of the
Mhm.
mother tongue. Um, Yet, if we translate everything with such ease and such accuracy, as AI is getting more and more accurate and faster, we might be presenting our students with a challenge of not taking risks in their new language, in English, for example.
Mhm.
So we have to be able to balance how much we translate and how much we translanguage, which
Mhm.
is that kind of pedagogical choice of verifying, affirming students thinking in their home language, but not compromising the target language. I actually wrote a new book that's
Mhm.
coming out
Oh,
in
nice.
September, and the title of the book is Wait, Don't
Ah.
Just Translate. So it's this notion that yes, there is a need, and we have to definitely honor our students' multiple languages, their home languages, their mother tongues. We definitely have to harness technology, but we can't fall um,
Trap. Mhm.
into that trap that now we're going to be over translating or just over relying on translation. We still have to hold on to our pedagogy that will build language and literacy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Andrea. So let me just inform you about the remaining meeting time. It's just left 8 minutes. It would be better me to stop here and then restart it again. I will send you now a new link. All right. So
Okay.
because I need time for conversion, like it's going to be converted to video version. I need to download it into my computer. I need just 2 minutes, and after 2 minutes, we will meet again.
Okay, so you'll send me a new link?
Yeah, I will send you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.